Good evening, everybody. It's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. It's December 18, 2023, just after 10 p.m. And it's story time with Lorraine. We're going to read a little bit more of Global Thuggery Insights on Control by Terror, Torture, Targeting of American Citizens by Corkin Cherubini. And I'm going to pick up where we left off. I'm going to start on page 142. Chapter 44, The Movers. They arrived late, well after dark, and took down a phone line or electric wire as they backed up the driveway. My wife was alone with no visible neighbors. When they came inside the house, she guessed that they were Middle Easterners. Fine, but the terms she agreed upon with the moving company had been broken, and she told them she had decided to opt out. That's when the larger of the two movers went into a barely controlled rage. The outburst frightened my wife enough that she reconsidered and had them load the furniture and boxes onto their empty truck as quickly as possible. In her 30 years of teaching, mostly high school seniors and college undergraduates, she had never experienced a frightful moment. Thousands of 17, 18, 20-year-old guys, no fright ever. But suddenly a professional mover frightens her? Admittedly, her description of the large Middle Easterners made me think, quote-unquote, Terminator. Several mornings later, they arrived in the driveway of our new home, bedraggled and sleepy. They did not look at least bit hostile. I guess they were from Iraq or Syria or Palestine. I asked, Israel? They said. I felt myself relax ever so slightly. It was 2003, and our big media had demonized and propagandized mean Arabs until they were programmed to automatically fear them more than anything except the CV virus. In short time, these moving pros had furniture and boxes spread all over the driveway, the garage floor, and the yard. Some pieces appeared to be unscathed. And when I mentioned that one piece needed to go upstairs, the lead guy did not fly into a rage, but I could tell he wanted to. We carry no furniture upstairs, quote-unquote, he said powerfully. Quickly, I tried making excuses for my profound stupidity on such matters, but he wasn't about to listen, much less excuse me. Once they were gone, we surveyed the damage. It was a long survey, and my wife was disgusted. She checked every piece of furniture, several of which had scrapes or torn upholstery, and the number of boxes and their contents. Several boxes were missing, but we had gained some that did not belong. Apparently, someone who owns a Christmas decor shop had shared the same truck. We had wreaths, bulbs, lights, plastic Christmas glasses, plates, plastic toys, and even some fold-up trees. I envisioned several trips to the local landfill. My fearless spouse took a different tact. She called everyone that might be connected to the moving company. Nothing. She called the FBI. They set her straight. The small damage you incurred is nothing compared to why we are trying to catch up with them, quote unquote. Can't find them, I thought. They're in a truck, a huge moving van. They were in my driveway, out in the open. Not the least bit furtive, and yet highly trained coverts can't catch up with them? We eventually filed a claim, but never heard back from anyone again. What we did hear on the news program was that a moving company had been spying on Americans. It was almost 2 decades before we heard that moving companies could be a quote-unquote classic cover for espionage. According to author Guy Knott, Guyenot, page 183, this was the first time my wife had called a federal agency for help, but she was ignored. Even though the problem might have been with a spy group from the Middle East, subsequent calls and FOIA requests to federal agencies concerning other issues have also been ignored. A few weeks later, the moving company van episode, I told friends, quote, if 2 Middle Easterners can do this much damage in a couple of days, no wonder the Middle East has problems, unquote. The friend chuckled. A few weeks later, a large dog ran into the side of their car, causing a good bit of damage. Since 2003, stranger things have been happening to us with increasing frequency. Until recently, we have not connected these events, if they could ever be connected. I'm not. Am I allowed to say this person's name? You know, that guy Jeffrey who was in the jail, who offed himself, who really didn't off himself, who disappeared. You know, the one with the island. Well, that case managed to catch our attention because of several headlines in the news, not mainstream media. No implications of that person's affair struck us for several months. It seemed to be just another story about setting honey traps to mire the careers of politicians in quick time. The day before, a huge healthy tree fell on our house and 3 vehicles, even though no wind was blowing. I realized our nation must be suffering from something more dangerous than the CV. The possible existence of foreign intelligence operatives choosing and directing much of our political force to legislate and develop foreign policy favorable to their country. Award-winning writer-researcher Whitney Webb has provided the public with a bountiful amount of detail on that person's involvement with the domestic and foreign intelligence. You know, the guy with the island. Several of the news columnists that have seemed informed and trustworthy tend to see Webb as an expert. Oh, she's great, guys. Whitney Webb. I wonder about the proximity, the juxtaposition of the CV-19 and that guy with the island affair. Well, the CV could be a test run to evaluate the unaliving power of various strains of the you-know-what. It could also be a preset of how to ramp up fear so that an entire population will easily give up its freedom. Think of 9/11. If we could assume for just a moment that the CV was a plandemic, not my words, foisted on us with the media's compliance and 24/7 focus, what real issues affecting our country and the world were being blacked out and covered up? Truly, this event is one of the most questionable in the history of American government and justice. Of much greater pandemic proportions is the question of electrochemical mind control. Taken alone, or with the more conventional biological or chemical weaponry, the capability for intensive and massive mind control is here. It has been here for decades. Please see the appendix for more information on mind control. Chapter 45, Fiction or Reality? Implications that resonate softly from the film Conspiracy Theory in 1997 should suddenly deafen a population 23 years later. Could the film reveal a huge dose of what Alan Watt calls quote-unquote predictive programming? What Watt describes is a plan to gradually program a population for a dystopian future. Predictive programming prepares us for anything green aliens to SWAT teams blowing up at our doors and bulldozing into our bedrooms at 3 a.m. To the average viewer, the main character, Jerry Fletcher, is merely a crackpot, cabbie, doing and saying a lot of nonsensical things. This same viewer will see a concocted, benevolent establishment coming to Jerry's rescue in the final scenes. Likely, only 1 in thousands will know about MK Ultra, the program of which Jerry was a victim, and understand the implications of its mind control experiments. When my wife and I first saw the film, we didn't know about MK Ultra or dog chips or the conceptual meaning of a Harvard ring. We did, of course, know a bit from mainstream media about fringe lunatics afraid of a little fluoride. Yes, then we were good, typical, naive American sheep. But it was such a rousing film, we decided to watch it again. At the time, we had no idea of the implications of what we thought was a fictional program of torture rather than seemingly accurate portrayal of LSD trials and mind control experiments. To us, it was a well executed, entertaining film. And even if there were a modicum of truth in Jerry's situation, it had happened in the past. Happened in the past. Nothing to be concerned about, right? We filed the film and forgot about it for 20 years. At that point, our lives had become a Jerry Fletcher existence. But there was no Geronimo, the shabby, near derelict hospital prison laboratory in the film. The latest high tech now enables totally remote torture. Directed energy can be beamed anywhere in our homes, our car, our yard, anywhere we happen to be. Gitmo and Geronimo are old technology. Surprisingly, Conspiracy Theory became a blockbuster with the 17th highest box office receipts totaling $137 million. Would such popularity create cause for concern among those responsible for the experimentation of MK Ultra? Were viewers piecing together an ugly puzzle involving psychological scientists like Dr. Jonas and his mind control experiments? If so, action must be taken. But what? Can a film with several major stars whose performances were outstanding be blacked out? Blacklisted? No, Filber, not the film. Then what? You know what. No, I really don't. Yes, you do, Filber. Think inside the box. I don't quite get it, sir. Yes, you do, Filber. You tell me. If you can't destroy the books, the DVDs, what do you destroy? Oh, the author, the singer, the star. You're quick, Filber. But the target is bigger than King Tut. We've decommissioned bigger, right? Yeah, we had some problems. Fun and games, my man. Like Fletcher Prouty said when he blew his little whistle, we do love fun and games. Besides Filber, the fun in this will be making it a little scene right out of a movie. Put our best coverts on this. Best of everything without the lysergic. Yes, sir. Heavy on the rage frequencies, right? Quote unquote rage frequencies. Of course. Still the best frequency for the guys. Oh, yeah, the rage frequencies that they inflict upon men. You're a genius, sir. Using that very film in their faces, like Dr. Jonas said, I'll put the words in his mouth, quote unquote, which they can do. Excellent, Filber. I'd like a tentative destruction plan on my desk in a week. I'll be there in 3 days. Final item, Filber. You are moving up. Yes, sir. I owe you, sir. Let's turn the page here. Sorry, guys. My fingers are not opening this page here. Okay. Chapter 46, The War Zone. Every period of social upheaval gives birth to songs of discontent. This is a quote by Sumangala Damodaran. A Nashville studio musician and songwriter insisted that this writer tell the world, in lyrics and music, about the hard events he had experienced prior to retirement, and so War Zone evolved. I thought the lyrics written in 2007, long before I had any idea I was being covertly assaulted, were a response to the trauma that I experienced as a result of correcting human rights abuses. What amazed me almost a decade later is how prescient these lyrics are. While it's impossible to expose much in 3 or 4 minutes, this song and several more, also written by TIs, may help create a badly needed genre depicting the horrors of gang stalking victims face daily. War Zone. This is like a poem or a song. Stay away from the window. Keep the curtains tightly drawn. I'll try to sleep until midnight comes. Then I'll watch until the dawn. Use the back roads, not the highways. Walk with care when you're uptown. See that all that moves or makes a sound. Watch what your eyes look at to the ground. Feel like a deer in the hunter's park on a cold November morn. Watch the shadows in the war zone. Chances are you're not alone. They're police, they're judges, no one to call in the end. They are the powers, they own our world. Do you think you have a friend? We smelled the smoke, we felt the poison, we heard the threats, we saw the hate. Senses slain beyond all reason, all year long a killing season. Refrain. Feel like a deer in Hunter's Park on a cold November morn. Watch the shadows in the war zone. Chances are you're not alone. Life ain't easy in the war zone. It's like crazy in the war zone. You might go crazy in the war zone. You won't sleep after the war zone. You'll dream forever about the war zone. It's like a crazy in the war zone. From Indigo, After the Rain, in 2008, by Corkin Cherubini. Oh, by the way, guys, they're all in on it. They're all complicit. And guess what? Karma's on its way every day. Chapter 47, The Trail of Tears. Life had turned into a TI, targeted individual shambles, again. But this time I went with my first artistic love, music. It was at the height of the Iraq slaughter, and it seemed sensible to try political protest. Great fun, and always the hope that at least one tune would become a catalyst for a real peace movement. Think Lenin, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young. The first tune was Trail of Tears, quote unquote, and it was to be and is dedicated to Cherokee vocalists who probably saved my life, literally. Recently, commemorative signs on roadways remind us of a monstrous, dark, hideous side of our history. Every time I leave the house, the signs are there. Do they even prick our conscience? Our fragile Native American population has dwindled to near extinction, whether by cold-blooded massacres, free blankets soaked in smallpox germs, covert death squads, or any one of the multiplicity of ultimately evil bags of tricks. It appears that as the Native American population is being exterminated, the levels of apathy increase. Take, for instance, the plight of Leonard Peltier, an innocent man who had been tortured and imprisoned by our quote-unquote justice system for 45 years. Upon first seeing the huge list of hundreds of notables and hundreds of organizations that supported Leonard, I thought he would soon be freed. That was 10 years ago, and he's still imprisoned. Who should we blame? Maybe we need to blame the commies along with the Russians again. Remember how great it felt in the 7th grade to fiercely hate commies? In the same way, quote-unquote, good people hated then unalived millions of witches in previous centuries. Good witch hunting and good commie unaliving is now supplanted by good gang stalking of targeted individuals or wars based on lies. That's what they do. They lie, 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 lie. Yeah, that's all they do is lie. When their lips are moving, they're lying. Leonard Peltier was an earlier victim, but consider too all of the political and societal leaders who have been openly unalived. And just so you know, folks, that's not what it says, but I have to say that because I don't think I could say the words. Okay, then there are those who were more clandestinely unalived by car bombs. Car electronics turned to crash and unalive induced heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and more cancer, ultra-rare designer disease, and supposed suicides. And just so you know, folks, the cancer word, that's not naturally occurring. Anytime somebody gets that anywhere in the body, it's being done to you by someone, by something, somehow. The body does not naturally produce it. This is not the way a civilized society should work. Though we can readily see torture and unaliving 10,000 miles away, we are blind when it presents itself to us in our own front or backyards. Unless the current direction of our society's headed changes drastically, we may all find ourselves treading on a quote-unquote trail of tears. Chapter 48, For Love. The 2008 Gandhi King Peace Conference was pretty big, with Amy Goodman and Father Roy Bourgeois as key speakers, and I felt honored just to be included on the program. My university classroom was almost packed. Only a few seats left in a little standing space. Unusual. A shadow of doubt ran through my mind. Had the people in this room heard that I was a great speaker? Or that I actually knew what I was talking about, using one God-giving talent for peace or activism? As I pondered this question, two clandestine agent types entered the room, walked past me without looking in my direction, and took seats in the back row. Compared to the other occupants, they looked bored and quite out of place. They were immaculately attired with perfect short hair trims, and their body build spoke of a lifetime free government paid membership to any Golden Atlas weight room. Soon the room was packed, and throngs of people in the hall were very disappointed. Boldly, I suggested that anyone not seriously interested in developing activist skills please leave, so that those in the hall could have a seat. I looked hopefully at the clandestine types, but either they didn't hear me or they ignored my request. Instead, they kept a watchful eye on whatever was outside the window. This conference took place 5 years before I heard of the slow unaliving targeting American citizens or gang stalking, so my concern about possible coverts was soon tossed aside as possible silliness. I did wonder whether Amy and the father entertained these and other clandestine types as well. For the next 2 hours, the coverts looked as bored as any high school student I had ever taught. And while high schoolers know looking bored means looking cool, these two did not even look cool. Everyone else in the room was dynamic, listening and questioning. The gist of my talk was to use whatever you love and enjoy to work for peace. If you love it, I said, you will do it often and you'll do it well. I explained what had prompted me to write and record my own Peace CD, which was finally in demo quality. As planned, they begged to hear it, so near the end of the 2 hours, sensing that the room needed soothing or rousing melodic relief, I played a few of the selections. As comic relief, the agent types provided enough sardonic apathy to balance out a room full of excitement. Can you just picture these morons? Oh my god, guys. Oh, well, let's repeat that one. I played a few of my selections. As comic relief, the agent types provided enough sardonic apathy to balance out a room full of excitement. 10 years later, in 2018, the CD was never released, nor were the other two that I wrote and recorded later. My writing was never finished. The peace movement was throttled, as were civil rights and women's movements, infiltrated fully. Even the environmental movement was infiltrated to serve the whims of controllers and corporations. Life in a secret, organized gang stalking program threw me from torrent to torpor. And after all, that's what it's designed to do. By 2014, I was fully aware, and my wife and I sought methods to inform the entire population. It was at this early stage that we realized who ran most of the media. Letter writing was a waste of time and money at almost $1 per letter. Who reads them anyway? $1. Yeah, well, guess what? I sent a certified letter this past week. It was $8.95. Then a few months ago, I accidentally heard rock star, which in a way resembled a musical piece. Days later, I looked for the lyrics and was struck agog that in a week, Rockstar had racked up more views than all of my essays. Letters, presentations, published books, and emails combined, about 1,000 times more. Ditto for most everyone. I never wrote the performer a letter asking him to try using his talent to dissuade audiences from sex and drugs, and instead try to become an activist for humankind. If you know this guy, you might suggest that he become an activist for humankind. We need the views, thanks. Part 4. Harassment intensifies. Chapter 49, Patterns, page 156. In 1997, we moved to the Northeast, but by 2001, bizarre events had turned our lives upside down. Several moves later, we settled in Tennessee. For a while, normalcy seemed to prevail, but soon, even that was tainted by a plethora of strange events. By 2012, a pattern began to emerge from too many harassing, harmful events. We soon realized we were being terrorized. By whom, we did not know. Then, huge, flat black helicopters and 2 engine black planes began skimming over our lot and hovering over our house. Shortly after that, a neighbor's house burned down. Plumbing problems abounded. Most everyone we spoke to seemed nervous, hostile, and evasive. What seemed like weather warfare struck our properties 3 times, causing great damage and expense. Suddenly we were plagued by a variety of pests. Bees, chiggers, dead birds, and other animals began appearing in and around our home. Electronic orchestras, not real ones, screeched in my ears, while my nerve-endings screamed for relief from some kind of attack by an undetectable energy source. Heart stoppages occurred regularly, whether I was active or just relaxing in my easy chair. Our house began smelling like toxic chemical lab, and I felt as if I were having an LSD type of experience. Does that even sound familiar, targeted folks out there? My wife, my mother, and I were struck with strong laser or maser type blasts. Both my mother and I developed respiratory problems from which she eventually passed. Flurries of municipal vehicles appeared wherever we traveled, even during a quick trip to the market. The list of torturous tactics is endless. More on incidents, quote unquote, in the next volume. Was the KKK after us? Nope. Not in the 1990s, and certainly not in the new century. Rather, guilty sponsors and their perpetrators have borrowed tactics previously used by the KKK, the Nazis, and the Stasi, and have integrated high-tech weaponry into their covert arsenal. The ultra-criminal forces assaulting our health, our finances, and our very lives are being reported by thousands on the internet and in books and videos. Their program, organized gang stalking, is modeled on COINTELPRO activities of the 60s and 70s and MK Ultra sub-projects in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They, quote-unquote, use the latest electronic, chemical, drug, and biological weaponry on victims, especially whistleblowers, dissenters, and activists. Oh, I need to add bugs and insects, too. DARPA is definitely in on this. Both research and personal experience indicate a malicious, never-ending need to trample, ruin, destroy anyone that covert operatives and their controllers perceive as non-supportive of their true agendas. Well, what is their agenda? I shudder at the thought. Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty and Ted Gunderson describe such agendas as anti-humane. Covert agendas may best be revealed in the declassified projects, programs, and operations for which documentation has not been destroyed. Unfortunately, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered that the MKUltra files be destroyed in 1973. Oh, see, they love to destroy the evidence. However, some had been misfiled and have since been recovered. It's called Carmageddon. It's the new word order. Yes. While covert organizations claim that it's necessary to hide their activities for the sake of... Guess what I'm going to say next, guys. Quote unquote. It's necessary to hide their activities for the sake of national security. One wonders whose security is really at stake. Chapter 50. The fourth force. The first 3 invisible force fields hit me as I attempted to get out of bed. 3 hits within a minute. Each time I tried to rise, but the first 2 times I was pushed back onto the bed. Nothing observable, no pain, no excitement. Just a force field. One that made me fleetingly wonder if my leg muscles had suddenly expired. But I knew better. On the 3rd attempt to exit the bed, I summoned all of my strength and conquered the invisible wall. Barely. I went into the kitchen and whispered what had happened to my wife. I remember trying to wear a macho smirk as if to say, big deal. These electronic gizmos can't keep me down. That evening, at the same exact location, in front of a double-paned, curtained window, I did not climb into bed of my own volition. Rather, a very strong force field crumbled me into the bed. My body convulsed into a prenatal position, after which I was unable to move. I felt as if all the musculature of a jellyfish in the sand, far from water. For several minutes, nothing about my body worked. Eyesight, voice, muscles, especially heart and breathing muscles, everything in my body felt totally collapsed and useless. For the first few seconds, I wondered if my heart would restart, if all my breathing mechanisms were ruined, and if there were any part of my body not compromised. Finally, breathing resumed, but it was painful. My heart beat spasmodically. Still, I had no real vision. I could see some light, but all familiar objects remained undiscernible. At some point, I began to hear my wife's voice, but I could not tell what she was saying. And of course, I could not answer. Shortly, her voice grew closer. I could distinguish concern, but I still could not understand the words she spoke. I tried to tell her that the same force that hit me earlier in the day just blasted me again, but 1,000 times more powerfully. My words at best were croaked whispers, coughed from lungs still not working properly. What if the force strikes again? The probability almost paralyzed me, but I managed to mutter, closet. My wife knew what I meant. Quickly, she helped me get to the lightly shielded 2 by 3 foot hall closet. Exhausted from the brief movement, I practically fell into the narrow space. Over an hour later, I noticed that the sharp pains in my chest had subsided when I took deep breaths, so I also seemed to be able to mentally command muscular movement. I just couldn't see. It took another hour before my eyes could focus. At my request, my wife had brought my smartphone to me before she finally returned it to bed at my insistence. I searched for information on laser weapons and was amazed about how many sites were filled with that information. It took yet another hour before I could focus properly on the fine print. Electronic attacks deniable. I read about laser weapons, masers, and a number of other DEWs, directed energy weapons, I'd never heard of. I imagine that the maser, which is a blend of laser and microwave technology, came as close to anything to delivering the force that had immobilized me. Imagine, quote unquote, is all I could do. Because most of the DEW technology is classified, and because those using it operate covertly, proving an attack by such weaponry is practically impossible. Finally, I slept, but it was fitful and fretful in the close confines of the closet. In a few hours, we were heading to my mom's old house near the Canadian border. Our vehicle seemed to be contaminated by some kind of poisonous substance that had been inserted into the vent system, because the portions of my skin not covered with clothing soon turned beet red. Even though the temperature was set below freezing, we were forced to ride with the windows down. As I drove, I looked over at my wife, so bundled that only her eyes and nose showed. At least they seemed to be sparing her from some of the worst. At least for the moment. Throughout the 24-hour trip, we wanted to believe we could escape. Soon, it became obvious that escape was not an option. After all, I had read the testimonials of hundreds of targeted individuals saying that there is no escape. A target might be a president of the U.S. senator, but let's see, where did I just? But the most important civil rights leader in the world. But because clandestine operatives have no real oversight, the types of quote-unquote deniable attacks with such weaponry on unsuspecting American citizens are entirely feasible. A year passed before I could connect a phone call from my 90-year-old mother saying she had awakened in her chair, unable to see or move any of her body parts. At the time, we were traveling in miles away from where she lived. We weren't as concerned as we should have been, since her recent history included many similar calls saying she thought that she was having a mini stroke, sparring us to drive to her home, only to find that she had fully recovered from what we assumed was merely an anxiety attack. As we spoke this time, her sight slowly returned, and she was moving her arms and legs. A relief, to be sure. In retrospect, what we believed to be old age, hypochondria, was in fact some type of DEW attack, directed energy weapon. Why? Because the similarities between my attack and my mom's are far too similar to be mere coincidence, and as the literature suggests, they go after family members as well. Page 162, Chapter 51, Tinfoil Hats. Only a few years ago, I would read or hear someone joke about tinfoil hats, and my beleaguered brain would say, another programmed perp. Maybe not. Some of these could be the crowd that hangs out at the Uptown Organic Whiskey Cellar, spouting sworn outlines and hoping to get a chuckle out of a few fellow wit. In fact, at times in a whiskey cellar, anything can seem hilarious. When the scene shifts to the computer screen where my favorite alternative news channel is going on about, oh my, tinfoil hats, right. After I've been zapped half a dozen times in the head and neck, this time I'm hoping this news guy is just unaware. Next, I check my second favorite news lady, who talks for 2 hours about why we have to immediately annex to the annex the entire Middle East, Africa, Central and South America. I eat a few rollades and try my third favorite program. If it can't be proved that people are being technologically mind controlled, then mind control doesn't exist. The newswoman smirks. As if. How can anything be proven if it's classified, top secret? Sure, it gets all declassified at some point. But what if that point is 30 or 40 years away? Chapter 52, Welcome to America, 2014. The two guys about half my age seemed to know, or thought they knew, more than I did. So I lowered my voice and told them the truth. I think I'm a targeted individual. The words were hardly out of my mouth before they burst into laughter. Not soft giggles, but the raucous blat of military majors when they hear a general's colorful joke. Yeah, you really look like a, and he says the T word, terrorist, one of them said, and that brought more laughter. Both of these fellows worked in high security installation. They would know things like how to spot a T. You know, one of those angry people. I've never seen a T, nor had anyone I'd ever known seen one. I had a couple of fairly bad students along the way, but not even one holy T. Okay, one guy said, we'll give you a call when that meeting date gets firmed up. Just jot your name and cell number on this sheet. Both guys were smiling. They acted so helpful. I felt almost untargeted. I handed the sheet back, smiling broadly. Suddenly, they looked puzzled, almost concerned. How do you pronounce that name? The shorter of the two asked with a perplexed frown. Corkin. And the last name is Cherubini. Cherubini. What kind of name is that? I was very tempted to say Iranian or Russian, but I stayed cool. It used to be American, he said. Chapter 53, 30 minutes. Document. Check outside security cameras for perps. Write a note of privacy issues to my wife, who is 3 feet away. Carefully take my dog, who has been blind for 10 days now, out to the toilet area. Document. Take an aspirin for an induced headache. Sit and think. How should I arrange my next written article? The phone starts ringing. I jump to check it. Another wrong number. This one is from Barbados. These are all sick people, guys. The phone rings 10 times. Likely Singapore or Barbados again. Get up, go to the chair. See if any ideas formulate. Eventually, begin writing. Jump out of the chair. Zaps are creating several strong heart palpitations. Use sign language to spouse to reveal what is happening and then move to another room. Baby dog follows, bumping into the door frame and table edges. He feels sick and very angry that covert assassins go after pets, family, and children. He takes another aspirin. Note that the cacophony in my ears and my head has changed to song loops and induced whine crescendos. So he moves to a different room, checking to see if the zaps follow. Baby follows. I pet her and feel calmer. I begin writing. The doorbell rings. I jump up and check the camera. Baby begins barking nonstop. Visitor is very evil looking. The phone rings again, just as baby continues barking. The call is from South America. The doorbell rings several more times. My wife starts for the door, but I stop her. I grimace. I shake my head. Induced headache becomes more insistent. Check camera. Purpose leaving. Baby stops barking. I get my tablet to check the news for the day for the first time in several days. The news is totally depressing, again, but likely very true. It's independent, alternative news. The pet baby I pet the baby some more, and that's all she's got left beside food. I look out the window for a while. The leaves are turning yellow. Look around the room at unparalleled mess. Filming and recording equipment clutter 3 rooms. Books and articles and DVDs abound. Think about all the bad news again, and how we would once pick several rallies, meetings, or conferences that needed our support. No longer. For the last several years, we have been heavily targeted and tortured, MK Ultra style. The perfect and protected MK Ultra. We have been neutralized, probably like thousands or even millions of others. Infiltrators harass. They know how to raise the blood pressure using their cell phone activity. I recall telling activists that they are the next targeted individuals, that every day the torture termination program swells. It is a slow, unaliving kind of torture. Just then, baby shrieks, blindly jumping up and biting at her side. A second later, my own heart stoppages have me jumping up. My wife looks up from her typing as if to say, is anything wrong? She's not even untargeted, but more covertly targeted. Her losses are not estimable. The lights go off again. You can't stop wondering when our next electrical, plumbing, or automated breakdowns will be. I hear a plane swoop over the roof and wonder again who is paying the fortunes to run such a program. Then instantly I recall that certain government groups may reap large fortunes from their drug trafficking. Then the turbulence of another round of stomach pains begins, and I brace for the worst. So I'm going to stop here, guys. I'm stopping at page 167, and we'll start up the next time. So I was reading Global Thuggery, Insights on Control by Terror, Torture, Targeting American Citizens. And just remember, they're all complicit. They're all in on it, and they are racking up their karma. And karma is coming around to them because every time they lie, every time they fail to tell the truth, every time you confront them and tell them something is happening, and then they send you a blank piece of paper for an incident report, they're racking up karma. They're all going to rot in hell. Karma's going to come around and bite their sorry old butts. So anyway, this is the book that I just read by Corkin Cherubini. Global Thuggery, Insights on Control by Terror, Torture, Targeting American Citizens. I look forward to your comments, your questions down below. And this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading, signing off for now. Please hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, get the message out there, and combats the cyber stalkers.